The outside door is open for the light to enter. 3 others fill the place: tobacco, petrol, and fish. I and the other 5 men, who are local fishers, are seated on makeshift benches in the casina, little house, as they call it here. They talk and smoke. At a corner, a man wearing blue jeans and a roll-up white sweater scans me with his eyes. He asks nothing, says nothing, just studies me in silence. He does it for a long period, so I decide to reciprocate his attention and I ask for his name in an affable tone. Suddenly, the other men stop talking and the indoor atmosphere changes into one of suspension. We all stay in silence. The man in the roll-up sweater hesitates. He turns his face downwards and looks fixedly at the bare cement floor. A few seconds after, he replies with a question to me. Are you a marine biologist? He is known and feared for his outspoken character. Born in the neighboring island of Pico, he has been a fisher by profession for 2 decades, ever since he was 17, in the Azorean island of Fayal. As in most fishing families in the Azores, he grew up under the tenets of Catholicism, visiting and being visited regularly by priests and listening to their sermons in the churches. Yet, over the last years, this has changed drastically. Nowadays, he and the other fishers visit and are visited mostly by marine biologists. Working in research units and governmental departments, they visit the fishers to talk and hear about their catches, their stories, as well as their worries and hopes. The marine biologists provide counseling and guidance to the fishers. Also common, they come to Casinha to tell about relevant information related to the fishers' activity, to spread good news, as they often say, what in Greek was called Evangelios, and later translated in English as a gospel. Fayal is one of the 9 islands that constitute the Portuguese archipelago of the Azores. According to Portuguese historians, when the first settlers established there, in the 15th century, new paths were opened, water springs were utilized, and Catholic churches were built, primary needs indispensable to settlers' lives. Indeed, one of the first buildings constructed was a Catholic chapel in Porto Pin. In the 18th century, a Swedish sailor described the village of Horta, the island's social center, as rising in an amphitheater on a low slope hill, and the main public buildings are convents and churches. Catholicism has been an indispensable component of Fayal ever since humans began to colonize it. In fact, Portugal is one of the most Catholic countries in the world, and Fayal is in the most Catholic region of Portugal, the Azores. In Fayal, the intensity of Catholic faith was a response to geophysics. The Catholic doctrine, as well as its saints and priests, were the most powerful defense against the dominant presence and uncertainty of the ocean. The ocean was always a total adventure here, the Catholic priest of the parish of Angustias explains to me, and divine protection was the only guarantee that people had when they were at the ocean. However, in the last decades, this changed radically. The priests preach to less and less people, and their message are less and less heard. But the geophysical source that historically propelled the residents' devotion to the Catholic priests maintains. As the priest of the parish of Conceição says, the ocean is still the reality here. We are surrounded by the ocean. There's no chance of living without it. So what changed? What is leading to the social decline of the Catholic priests in Fayal? Between the middle of the 19th century until the 1980s, whaling was an important activity in Fayal. The large mammals were hunted along the coast by men on whaling canoes. This was an ocean-land enterprise that involved a group of men moving at the ocean and the eyes of the watchers, os vigias, fixed inside land lookouts. During this period, the sperm whales embody a multitude of uses and economic benefits for the local population. Whaling, of course, was not just an economic enterprise. It was intrinsic to the feeling of assurinidade, a concept introduced by Vitorino Nemésio that refers to both the experience of being Azorean and the longing for the Azores. Whaling was also a conspicuous field of Catholicism. For example, in contrast with land vehicles, the whaling canoes were material manifestations of Catholic devotion at the ocean. They had prints, locally called as estampas, with the names of patron saints nailed to the wood. These Catholic saints were not just divinity symbols moving gratuitously on ocean waters, but actually remunerated members of the whaling crew. The income generated by the selling of whales' body parts, known as soldada, was distributed among the entire workforces, human and deific. For example, if there were 5 men on board, then the soldado would go to the 6 presence, human and spiritual, in the boat. The patron saint's money was delivered to the church and spent mostly in the organization of the saint's annual celebration. Yet, at the end of the 20th century, whaling was officially forbidden in the Azores. By joining the European Economic Community in 1986, Portugal adopted and nationally enacted the whaling ban instructed by the International Whaling Commission. In Fayal, the whaler fishers were legally forced to change their relationship with the oceanic environment, and associated with that, a fundamental basis informing the meaning of human bravery at the ocean collapsed. As the whalers in Fayal saw their activities compromised by the whaling ban, a group of professionals started arriving in the island. Mostly marine biologists, they came to work and live in Fayal to foster, study, and teach the principles of the sustainable ocean. Today, more people than ever before pursue such mammals at the ocean enclosing Fayal. These new chasers do not bring harpoons with them, but radar cameras and other registering technologies. And in contrast with the recent past, they do not adventure into the ocean with the company of Catholic saints. Now, it is the marine biologists, or their knowledge, that accompany and protect most of the people into the ocean. The whaling ban marked the beginning of a radical new cycle in the island. From the 1990s onwards, Fayal became a hotspot for marine science. The headquarters of the Instituto do Mar moved to Horta. The Rebikov-Nigeler Foundation for Marine Research was established. The Observatório do Mar dos Açores was created, and more recently, the Oceanus Research and Development Center emerged as a new university research unit. In the meantime, the existing Department of Oceanography and Fisheries of the University of Azores reinforced and internationalized its activities. All these occur in the city of Horta, a 8 square kilometers place, the same place which the foreign sailors used to describe as dominated by Catholic convents and churches. The university's Department of Oceanography and Fisheries accommodated most of the marine researchers. Its office, labs, and aquariums were in a prefab facility at the Horta's fishing dock, just 50 meters from the Casinha, the social place for the fishers, where I began this presentation. In 2010, the university's Department of Oceanography and Fisheries expanded. The facility at the fishing dock was converted into the deep sea lab, while most of the scientists' office were transferred to the old hospital Walter Bensaúde, a ministerial edifice run and owned by one of the most influential religious institutions in Portugal, the Santa Casa da Misericórdia. In the public imaginary, this was not just a simple extension of infrastructure, it was an extension of roles. Marine biologists ascended to an important public and moral position in the island. In July 2019, the head of the Secretariat for the Sea, Science and Technology of the Azores, a marine biologist himself, made a speech in the new facilities of the department. Marine science needs to touch on people's emotions in order for them to better understand the importance of the marine scientists. His words highlighted how marine science in general and marine biology in particular came to cover the ground occupied by Catholic priests in Fayal, the human feeling. Bruno Latour says that the religion propelled by the priests is all about immanence, the appeal to the inner feelings. Likewise, John Bielecki says that religion and the work of its priests is about the intensification of an intimate knowledge, to touch on and potentiate people's emotions. If this is so, then in Fayal, marine biologists are taking on a priesthood role. They achieve social relevance not just by making declarations of certainty as it is commonly associated with scientific enterprise, but above all, by appealing to the people's emotions, to their feelings. In an early morning, a marine biologist tells me the question that drives his work. How can we recover from the evil that we have already done? His we encompass a human entirety in need of guidance for the oceans, and as humans, own good. As most of his colleagues, he is not just performing a job, but a vocation. He is in a mission. The philosopher of science Michael Russ says, "There is nothing in our science that gives meaning to the world." In the same vein, the renowned biologist John Maynard Smith stresses that science has nothing to say about the value of human beings, about what is right and what is wrong. Certainly, the marine biologists that I met in Fayal would disagree with Russ and Smith, because it is as marine scientists that they achieve and disseminate meaning, and it is as marine scientists that they find and reveal what counts as right and wrong, in short, what counts as moral. Consider the next and final example. In July 2018, as part of the state-sponsored public series Conversas com Mar, Conversations with Sea, a marine biologist talks to an audience of around 30 people who stay seated on wooden benches outdoors. The marine biologist speaks of killing. The ocean tolerates it, he says, yet only under certain conditions. He brings his mouth close to the microphone and asks in a deeper voice, "Do you know why we shouldn't kill small fish in the ocean?" A teenager raises her hand and says, "Is that because they are children?" "Good, good, my dear," the marine biologist replies, "but not everybody knows that, so let me talk about it." He proceeds with a speech on the virtue of reproduction in the ocean. He uses grand concepts: life, death, greed, human extinction, regeneration, earth, and explains that small fish should not be killed for they cannot reproduce. The marine biologist tells that the ocean is reaching a point of no return and urges them, the audience and humans in general, to let small fish populate it and multiply therein. These are important and urgent warnings that are more and more voiced by activists, journalists, celebrities, and different groups of scientists in different regions in the world. Yet, in this context, as part of a small crowd gathered in front of the marine biologist, collectively and silently contemplating his words, I could not avoid thinking on how these resemble a mass. The marine biologists came there to deliver a speech of both exhortation and reproof, based on a body of knowledge and principles invisible to unaided eyes. Implicitly, he performed himself as both a leader and medium of such a knowledge and principles, and he embodied an altruist mission towards the public good. The marine biologist converted into a messenger from something much greater than all of us there, into a kind of theologist who professes and is skilled in that which pertains to a supreme existence. His speech echoed epic narratives of salvation as that in the book of Genesis. Be ye fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly and multiply therein. The goal was clear: to disseminate the knowledge, advocate for a way of life, and promote alliance to a certain moral principles. Inadvertently, he was a body and voice in a long-established priestly field. Impelled by this experience, I decided to attend a Mass at the Igreja de Nossa Senhora da Graça. This church is an emblematic locale of Catholic practice associated with the ocean. It harbors the statue of Senhor Santo Cristo. This is its story as told by Padre João. The statue of Senhor Santo Cristo in the church was brought by the ocean. 300 years ago, some fishers found it at the beach. They brought it to the church. Yet, the right arm was missing. Over time, the priest and other people tried to glue fitting arms on the statue, but they always took off. One day, after collecting wood at the beach, a woman noticed that there was a stick that didn't burn. She gave it to the priest. When he put it against the statue, the wood piece immediately stuck to it. That was the missing arm of Christ. Located between hills and facing ocean waters, the church has a mass every Thursdays at 5 p.m. I arrived there on a Thursday at 5:15, worried and upset about my delay. The church door was closed. I walked until I met a man in his 50s who told me, "Only 2 or 3 old men show up for the mass, no more, so the priest closed it. And with no priest, no mass." I told him about my anthropological interest for the ocean. The man takes a cell phone from his pocket and tells me to wait. He called the priest, who tells him the place where he could get the church keys. In this afternoon, I stayed 2 hours with this man inside Igreja de Nossa Senhora da Graça, contemplating the statue of Senhor Santo Cristo. A mass was scheduled for that church at that time, and yet we were alone there. It meant a contrast with the rising popularity of the marine scientific initiatives, such as that of Conversas com o Mar. While Catholic priests are losing audience and performing their teachings in places lacking humans, marine biologists are enticing the residents' interest and attracting their presence. Characteristic of their talks, the ocean is projected not as that nature of the Enlightenment science, mechanized, controllable, external to humans, but rather as immanent, transcendent, as emotional. In this sense, in Fayal, the allure of marine biology is that God is not pushed out of science, but rather takes a different name, ocean, and the marine biologists are its mediators.